Today, I'm going to share how I got my first web developer job. And a lot of people can speculate how they think they got their first job, but I was actually able to talk to my boss and confirm a lot of these things. So I'm going to share what I think, what I know actually, made me competitive, and what, like, the mistakes that I made, and I'm going to try to give you some recommendations that are going to be relevant to this current market. Because when I got my first job, it was 4 to 5 years ago. So here we go. I'm going to start with, what was I even doing when I tried to become a web developer? I was an aquatics director. It was my first job out of college that was full-time. I could pay my bills finally, be independent. So I was really excited to accept it. I don't even think I negotiated the salary. I just said, screw this. I'm getting out of my state. I'm going to go elsewhere. And I loved it at first. It was a lot of fun. It was a management job. Managed about 25 staff, mostly part-time positions. I think all part-time. And it felt like exactly what I wanted to be doing. And then the honeymoon phase ran out, maybe 4 months in, something like that. And I was covering shifts, and I was trying to accommodate my management style to both a lot of teenagers and an older audience. I felt like I was kind of being split apart, trying to make everyone happy. In truth, I just had a lot of growing to do as a manager, and it was a tough job just because of the amount of hours and stress that I had. And so, one morning I remember thinking, I'm like, I don't want to go into work. This is the first time I thought that, but okay, I'm going to go in anyways. And then that kept happening. And it happened again and again and again. And what I would do is I would go home, and I found Treehouse. I've always liked coding. I've kind of always experimented with it. I never thought you could become a professional software engineer just from like some online course, right? I always thought I need a CS degree, but I can't afford one. So I kept learning at Team Treehouse, and I remember discovering Chris Sean at the time, and that would fill my evenings, and it would just kind of chill me out. I would just zone out and code and build stuff, and it was fun. And I kept thinking, why aren't I doing this professionally? Like, what do I really have to do to be able to do this? And the more I watched Chris Sean, the more he gave me confidence that I could just learn how to code on my own without dumping, $50-something thousand into college again. So yeah, I took the leap. I wouldn't recommend a lot of people take that leap, but I quit my job. I gave like a 6-week notice, and I just started learning how to code. I started with Treehouse, and I learned a lot of PHP and HTML, CSS, worked a part-time job on the side because my money ran out very quickly. And about 1.5 years was when I gained confidence to apply for my first job. That was one of the biggest mistakes I made. The first time I built a project, instead of iterating on it and trying to make it perfect and then redoing it, I think I redid my portfolio like 11 times or something like that. It took me that long to apply for my first position. That's ridiculous. You should never wait that long. Get that feedback as early as possible, but I did not do that. So I applied for the PHP position. I went all the way to Chicago because I lived in Northwest Indiana at the time. And it was actually, I was talking with a recruiter, and it made me realize I don't want to be a PHP developer. She was talking about the different applications that I would build, and maybe I just had a bad experience. It felt like she was, I don't know, it felt like she was kind of just judging me, like my work wasn't good enough, because I would show her my project. Well, do you have source control? Do you have this? And, these were my own internal insecurities. And I'm like, man, maybe I do suck. Maybe I need to put more time into this and really go back to Team Treehouse and learn more. And the truth is, I just didn't have a lot of confidence, at all, with my coding. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. And so I let that first interview get to me initially, but one thing I realized like a week later, I'm like, that wasn't that bad. Now I kind of know what to expect. And so I'm going to do it again. I started applying more, and I probably put in hundreds of applications before I got my first position, but I got calls back and I kept getting rejected, and I would push for the reason. And I would try to be very kind about it. It's just like, I want to grow. Why didn't I get hired? And I think if you word it in the right way, most employers will at least give you a piece of why. I think you have to realize a lot of employers have a lot of legal liability that they have to deal with, and going into detail with those reasons. So, I know that's a very controversial issue. Employers aren't reaching back. From the hiring side, I know there's a reason for it. And I've talked to a lot of hiring managers and CTOs about it over the years. And I know you want feedback, but sometimes you're not going to get it. So you have to learn to just learn what you could have improved with the interview, and, ask questions. It's okay to, you don't want to come off like, man, I really blew that, didn't I? How can I improve? You can word it differently. You can be like, that was fun. Definitely got caught up here. What would be your suggestion to practice some of these types of problems? I want to get better at these. It's like the way you word it matters, and you can get that feedback during the interview. Part of that interview is about building those relationships and having fun with the other person, because you might be coding with that person if they hire you, and they're just another person at the end of the day. So I started learning that pretty late into applying, but one thing I realized was I lacked JavaScript knowledge, and I still didn't have enough confidence to feel like I was going to learn it quickly. I was dealing with a lot of financial issues at the time. Like I said, my money ran out very quickly. I think I only had like 3 months worth of savings or something like that, and it took me two years, maybe 2 years and 3 months to get a job. So I was working a part-time job and trying to pick up as many hours as I could. And I'm like, man, I can't keep doing this. I'm running myself ragged. So what do I do? How do I learn JavaScript enough to be able to get these positions that keep requiring me to know JavaScript way better than I do right now? And so I ended up going to coding bootcamp. And it was a really good choice back then, a really good choice for me. It supplemented my JavaScript really well, and it gave me tons of confidence, and I got a job 6 weeks later. But one thing that I learned, once I had a minimum amount of knowledge for the technologies a lot of companies were hiring for in Chicago, I realized you don't have to try that hard to stand out. But I don't think a lot of people give you practical advice that fits your personality and fits your habits. And because I think sometimes like the basic advice that I would give people really is just like, figure out why you love coding. And I want to share how I got my first job. We're going to jump into this, and I think this is going to go ahead and hopefully illuminate some of this on how you can stand out. So for 5 years, not 5 years, 2-3 years, I was live streaming on Twitch, and I would just code. And at first it was scary. A lot of people judging my code, and I'm like, oh man, hiring managers are going to see this, they're going to see how bad I am. And then, several months into it, I realized like people were actually learning from me, even when I was starting off, because I started off right from the beginning live streaming very early on, and people were actually learning from me. And I remember only spending a few months learning how to code, and I'm like, this is crazy. I don't know enough for you to learn something for me, right? But I was teaching, and then I would also attract other senior developers that would help me along the way, and that would help others in my chat. So I live stream on Twitch probably about 2 years, and hiring managers noticed that. That's one thing that I remember brought up several times, like, wow, you do this, you live stream and you answer junior developers' questions. That is really cool. And it wasn't the managers didn't care so much about like I don't think they were super impressed with what I could do with code, but they were really excited that I was willing to help other developers. Because, ultimately, like when you're on a team, you should be helping each other out. You want to bring in people that want to build others around them up. And that, like me live streaming on Twitch and just answering questions, I didn't even think much about it. I'm just like, maybe I can get some donations and extra money along the way and help a few people. But that made such a huge impact. And, I'll link it above in a card, but I talked to my boss about this in one of my podcast episodes. And, that I think that was one of the big things that caught his attention. And so, you hear like, oh, post content, write a blog, stuff like that. Maybe you're not interested in creating content. Maybe you don't like to write. Maybe you don't like to talk to too many people, but you don't necessarily have to create content in the way I was creating content. There are so many different avenues. You can go on Stack Overflow. You can answer questions. You can just like post your project and get feedback. I think the key thing is to get yourself out there and expose yourself to other aspiring developers and professional developers and interact. Give employers a window into how you interact with other developers when you're trying to code, especially when you're facing a challenge. When, you'd be surprised at how many people don't handle stress well and don't handle challenges well, and they take it out on other people, or they get really defensive when they get feedback. When you can show employers that you can overcome challenges and boost everyone else up around you and make them feel good while you are stressed, that's a very, very powerful thing to do. That's very valuable to companies. And a lot of teams do want to hire people like that. And so all I did was give my first employer a window into that. That's it. I was just myself. I just talked to people like I normally would. And I gave my future employer a window into, first of all, like that I was kind and helped other people, but also they did see me code. I skipped my first technical interview, and I've talked about this before, but the only technical challenge that I had was we talked about React and we talked about JavaScript. Like what about React excited me? What do I wish React would improve? Like, it was a very casual conversation. And other applicants went through technical challenges. I think they would take a project and then come back and do an interview with that project, and they would kind of just challenge conventions and how that person built out the project, the solution. What would they do differently? What would they improve? I didn't do any of that. And I laugh about it now, but I really think the key thing is, whether it's going to be creating content or just interacting with people at meetups, it's just getting yourself out there and meeting people. People are going to notice when you're treating others kindly. People are going to notice when you're helping others. People are going to notice when you're excited about software engineering, when you're excited about the project that you're building where you just can't shut up. Those are the passion projects they ask about. When you speak up and you don't hold all of that in, and you talk to people in a public way, it doesn't have to be content creation. It doesn't have to be creating YouTube content or Twitch, or it could be something simple like networking and people overhearing conversations that you're having, and you talking with someone, and they're like, hey, by the way, in their head, like, you sound pretty cool. Would you like to join our meetup or our event coming up? Would you like to join our Discord community, our Slack community? It's just getting involved in the software engineering community, because you'll realize a lot of really healthy, productive teams, they interact with each other. They help each other. They build tools and documentation, and are always there to kind of try to help the other software engineers grow. Like, you see so many software engineering communities that thrive on this mentality of just being helpful with other people. When you can showcase that you can do that, you want to do that, that's like 90% of the work that you have to do. I know that sounds really weird. Like, you have to get a minimum technical proficiency, especially with the stacks that are most marketable in your area. But, you know, a lot of it is really just exposing yourself and giving people a window into who you are, and even showing some of your code. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do you realize, like, I struggled for days with, like, not being able to place, like, an element in the right spot on the page, and I sucked with data structures and algorithms. Like, I absolutely sucked with it. Even coming out of Full Stack Academy, I felt like I was one of the worst students, and I was pretty good with React. I confused some JavaScript fundamentals. I didn't have a good understanding of architecture. I didn't have a really good understanding of conventions that I wanted to consistently follow. And my project showed that I didn't have completely consistent conventions. Like, I screwed up in a lot of ways, and I still got that first position. Companies can train you technically much faster than they can build up the soft skills in you that's going to make a team really thrive. Focus on your habits. Focus on your soft skills. Focus on interacting with people, listening to them. Focus on building up the skill of active listening and, like, really caring about what people think and asking them questions. People love to talk about themselves. And it might drain some energy. You might not be used to doing that. It takes practice. But when you focus on a lot of these soft skills, networking and just interacting with people, that's, companies want that. They can train the technical portion of it, especially with an entry-level position. So, that's pretty much it. I exposed myself on Twitch, and that sounds wrong. I live stream on Twitch, and I helped other aspiring developers. And I would say there was one other thing, and I'm forgetting it. Oh, so I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of, like, cover letters. Even to this day, I hate submitting cover letters. I really don't know the company. So the research that I do, it's a lot of, like, superficial information that I'm finding, and I'm just trying to appeal to them. And, to be honest, there are very few companies that I'm, like, 100% excited to work at, because I don't know these other companies. I don't know the teams yet. So I kept skipping cover letters, and that was a big mistake. But one thing that my first company asked me to do is, like, I applied on their website, I submitted my resume, and then they had me fill in extra information, why I want to work there, what excited me about software engineering, etc. So by the time I was done with it, I felt like I filled out, like, 2 cover letters worth of information, like 2 full cover letters worth of information. And that was another thing that got them to look at my application, to even get them to look at my live stream, was because I elaborated what excited me about software engineering. And it showed that, I was in this for the long haul. I love coding. I really was eager to learn about, like, project management, UX, like, working with departments like that, because I have an entrepreneurship mindset, and they're like, oh, you're probably going to work well with these people. At least I think they thought that. Maybe I'm wrong. But either way, I'm going to link it above if I haven't already. Watch my interview with my first boss. We go into this. We talk about it. He gives some really good advice for aspiring developers. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some relatable advice on how you can get your position. I didn't want to go into a bunch of generic information and advice, because I really think, even when I do my mentorship sessions, it's like I really get to know the person. I don't like giving this, like, generic template, do this, because most people won't even follow through with everything, and, like, it doesn't really relate to them. And I think a lot of people have their strengths, and I think you need to figure out what those strengths are. A lot of those strengths come from you building them up in your previous industry and figuring out a way to integrate your old industry into becoming a software engineer is what makes you unique. It's what makes you stand out, and not just not just another code monkey. that can build something with code. You're more than that as a software engineer, and you need to highlight that, and you need to show employers that. So if this was helpful, let me know. I'd be really interested in what you feel like is getting you stuck in getting that position. Have you even thought about it? And you want to be critical, but you're going to get that position eventually. Don't be so critical that you don't even want to code anymore. And like, I know a lot of people beat themselves up over it. So I promise you're going to eventually get that position. Please keep pushing forward. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions, or if you want me to create other videos, let me know.